Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. You know, if you've ever felt like your summer garden is just this chaotic, exhausting chore that totally burns you out by July and leaves you with nothing but a $200 water bill and like 3 sad tomatoes, I really want you to change your perspective right now. Today, we aren't just looking at a patch of dirt. We're looking at a highly efficient, high-yield, smart system that's just waiting to be built, and I'm going to show you exactly how to engineer it.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our 6-part blueprint to get this done. We're going to cover beating summer stress, smart watering and mulching, choosing the right crops, natural pest and heat defense, the small garden layout, and finally your setup plan and ROI.
All right, kicking things off with part 1, beating summer garden stress.
Let's start by validating a super common frustration. Why do our summer gardens actually fail? It feels kind of counterintuitive, doesn't it? When the extreme heat hits, we panic. We instinctively water more often, we dump way more fertilizer on our plants, and yet, somehow, this almost always leads to even worse results. Wilted plants, totally wasted money. Why is that? Well, here's exactly what's going on behind the scenes. When that harsh sunlight hits, the soil dries out incredibly fast. So as we desperately try to keep up, we start spraying water everywhere, which sends our water bills straight through the roof. But here's the really critical part. Heat stress actually triggers a whole cascade effect. When a plant gets stressed by the heat, its leaves become weaker. That's basically like putting out a neon buffet sign for pests. Aphids, beetles, caterpillars, they just multiply rapidly. And if you're out there watering from overhead in the evenings, you're keeping those leaves wet all night, which causes fungal diseases to spread like wildfire. We are essentially doing all this hard work just to shoot ourselves in the foot. But, and this is a big but, here is the incredible potential upside. By simply upgrading your approach from reactive panic to a proactive, smart system, the exact same small area of land can yield 2 to 3 times more food. You don't need more space, you literally just need a better system.
Moving right along to part 2, smart watering and mulching.
And this brilliantly illustrates the foundational infrastructure of our system. Overhead sprinklers are just terribly inefficient for a summer garden. They spray water up into the air where it evaporates super quickly, they keep the leaves wet, which invites that fungus we just talked about, and they waste precious water on walkways where nothing is even growing. Compare that to a soaker hose. A soaker hose delivers water slowly, directly into the root zone, and keeps the leaves completely dry. For a basic cost of just $30 to $70 for a small setup, this root zone precision is an absolute game changer.
I really want you to keep this golden rule in mind. The goal is not to water more, but to make every drop of water stay in the soil longer. That right there, that is our central mantra for beating the intense summer heat.
So how do we actually execute that mantra? Well, here are the exact installation steps for your water retention layer. First up, place your soaker hose about 5 to 10 centimeters away from the base of the plants. Then, and this is absolutely crucial, add a 5 to 8 centimeter thick layer of organic mulch like straw, dry leaves, or aged wood chips right over the top of it. This acts as a protective, cooling blanket for the soil, it protects the beneficial microbes, and completely stops evaporation. Finally, make sure to leave a little open ring around the actual stem of the plant. If the wet mulch touches the stem directly, it can trap moisture and cause the whole plant to rot.
All right, part 3, choosing the right crops.
Now that our physical infrastructure is built, let's talk about the hardware. Treating your garden like a smart system really means running the right software for your specific climate zone. It all comes down to right plant, right place. Look, not every plant is designed to handle the brutal summer sun, and forcing a cool other plant to somehow survive a July heat wave is a battle you are always going to lose. Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark contrast between what thrives in a cooler place like Wisconsin versus the deep heat of South Texas. In zones 3 to 5, where summers are shorter and cooler, you want things like potatoes and bush beans, but you really should avoid long-season watermelons because they just won't have time to mature. But look down at zones 10 plus, places with extreme 40 degrees Celsius heat. Down there, you need to completely abandon regular tomatoes and cilantro during peak summer and rely on hyper-resilient crops like cowpeas, okra, and tropical herbs. When you match your crop to your zone, you immediately remove like half the friction of gardening.
Next up, part 4, natural pest and heat defense.
You see, a smart system doesn't just sit there and grow. It actively defends itself. First, we use a brilliant organic defense mechanism called companion planting. If you plant a massive, uniform block of one single crop, like tomatoes, you are essentially setting up a giant, easy-to-find buffet for tomato-loving pests. But by growing different, carefully chosen crops together, you tactically confuse those insects, attract the good predator bugs, and build a really balanced micro-ecosystem. Here are 3 highly effective winning combinations you can use. Try planting your cherry tomatoes alongside basil and green onions. The strong smell of those herbs actually mask the scent of the tomatoes from pests. Combine trellised cucumbers with pole beans and marigolds. Marigolds are fantastic for increasing insect diversity. And try zucchini with nasturtium and herbs. These combinations naturally suppress pest outbreaks and vastly improve your soil coverage at the exact same time.
But hey, biological defense isn't always enough, right? Sometimes you need a literal physical shield. In hotter states, full sun exposure can lead to severe heat shock, dropped flowers, and burned leaves. And get this, that happens even if the soil is wet. The plant is simply sweating out water through its leaves way faster than its roots can drink it up. The solution? A 30 to 40% shade cloth. For just 20 to 40 bucks, you can filter that intense, punishing light from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. It reduces plant stress instantly, allowing your garden to just keep producing right through the worst heat waves.
Which brings us to part 5, the small garden layout. Okay, so we've got our strategy, our watering system, and our plants. Let's bring it all together into a beautifully optimized physical blueprint for a compact 100 to 200 square foot space. Bed 1 holds your cherry tomatoes, basil, and green onions for a continuous summer harvest. Bed 2 utilizes vertical trellises for cucumbers and pole beans, which massively saves your ground space. Bed 3 is your heat-tolerant powerhouse with peppers, oregano, and amaranth. And finally, Bed 4 is designed for the absolute hottest days, featuring okra standing tall above sweet potatoes. The sweet potato vines actually act as a living ground cover to naturally suppress weeds and lock in that moisture.
And finally, part 6, setup, plan, and ROI.
Let's move to the practical side and see how this builds out into an actual timeline, because a smart system should definitely pay you back. Here's your first 30 days. In week 1, you build the beds, lay down that vital soaker hose, and direct sow your seeds like beans and squash. Sowing seeds directly is so much cheaper than buying little seedlings. Week 2, you lock in a moisture with your mulch blanket and set up those vertical trellises. By week 3, you're on to preventative maintenance, pruning the lower leaves of your tomatoes and cucumbers to improve airflow and stop any fungus. And by week 4, your system is already paying out with your first harvest of fast-growing greens and herbs. Oh, and to keep all of this super cheap, start making your own compost from dry leaves and kitchen scraps right from day 1.
So the crucial point here is the cost. Setting up this highly resilient, water-saving, pest-defending smart garden typically only requires an initial investment of about $100 to $300. Most of that just goes toward your soaker hose, some seeds, and the mulch. And the return on that tiny investment is staggering. Over a 3 to 4 month peak harvest season, a properly managed smart garden of this size can offset your grocery bills by $300 to $1,000. Plus, think about year 2. Your infrastructure is already built, meaning your costs drop to near zero while your soil only gets richer and healthier. It really is just a brilliant way to rethink the season. Let's stop fighting the summer heat with a garden hose and a prayer. Build the infrastructure, run the right plant software, and let the system do the heavy lifting for you. So I leave you with this question. Now that you have the blueprint, what will you grow with your new smart system? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy learning.